despite the fact that under the last administration, nearly $8 trillion in bills was compiled. I think I have a little chart here just to give you a little visual. Almost $8 trillion during the Trump administration, $676 billion during the Biden administration. So what Senator McConnell is refusing to do is to pay the debts of what were rung up under his leadership when he was in the Senate, still continues to be, of course, and when Trump was president. The debt limit is about paying for bills we have already spent. It is not about initiatives that we're talking about and debating now. And this tells you exactly where those costs came.
So what's happening right now is that the United States will run out of money to pay all of its bills by October 18th if the debt limit isn't raised by Congress, which would then force the government into default, send the US into a recession, wipe out 6 million jobs, send the unemployment rate to 9%, and eliminate $15 trillion in household wealth, according to the chief economist at Moody's. Needless to say, the results would be catastrophic for the United States, and that would only be exacerbated by the fact that we are still struggling to regain our footing on the heels of what has been an excruciating pandemic. But because Republicans are only focused on doing whatever they can to oppose Democrats' ability to govern, allowing the US to default is a move that they're willing to take. But what's most shameful about this, as if we really needed another example beyond the fact that they're even considering not raising the debt ceiling, is that the debt that they're refusing to pay for is for money already spent, including the $7.8 trillion spent during the Trump administration. In other words, every single Republican jumped on board to give millionaires and billionaires and corporations a tax cut that cost $2 trillion and dried up federal revenues and racked up trillions of dollars of debt, and now, because Joe Biden's in office, they've decided that they don't want to pay off that same money that they've just spent. Now, if Republicans did care about protecting the US economy and the millions of people and trillions of dollars of wealth at risk here, the solution would be obvious. There would be a simple up or down vote with enough Republicans on board to overcome a Republican filibuster to raise the debt ceiling in the Senate. But that's not what's going to happen, because Mitch McConnell, while conceding how important it is to raise the debt ceiling, has also vowed that no Republicans will actually vote to do that.
Do you have any concern that your position on the debt ceiling could provide fuel to Democrats to change the filibuster? They are apparently discussing possibly using changing the filibuster.
The debt ceiling needs to be addressed. The only question is who should address it. We've laid out a path for 2 months here. It's easily done. There's plenty of time additionally this month to do the job. And I hope our friends on the other side will step up and take care of it.
Because nothing says we understand what's at stake by allowing the US to default quite like promising to block every effort to ensure that the US doesn't default. And by the way, Jen Psaki made that abundantly clear at her own press briefing, where she acknowledged not only how easy it would be to resolve this issue, but also the fact that Republicans are refusing to pay for their own spending.
Did the president ever consider asking Democrats to use reconciliation earlier this year to lift the debt limit and avoid potentially cratering markets and affecting the American people? If this is such an economic risk, why give McConnell any say at all?
Why let McConnell off the hook or Republicans off the hook? I mean, this is their debt that they chalked up themselves. This is a period of time where we could easily solve this in the next 2 days. And easily do that through allowing Democrats to be the adults in the room, despite the fact that Republicans spent like drunken sailors over the last 4 years before President Biden took office. So it's easy to get it done. We did not need to start a long procedural process. That's exactly what that would be. We're not ruling out options because, as I said in response to an earlier question, we have to get this done. We have to get this done to ensure that people don't worry about their retirement savings, don't worry about their college savings for their kids. But it's easy to get it done, and we don't think Republicans should be let off the hook.
And before you say, well, this is just politics, everyone pulls the same garbage on both sides, no. Democrats voted not once, not twice, but 3 times to suspend the debt ceiling while Trump was president, even though doing so would help him. But now that Biden's president, Republicans are refusing to do it at all. So no, both sides are not the same. And beyond that, let's just be honest here. It's not surprising that Republicans would threaten default on the heels of a pandemic that they also exacerbated. Remember, this pandemic did not have to be this way in the United States. If we had followed every step recommended by health professionals, if we had worn masks, masks and followed stay-at-home orders and eliminated unnecessary contact and avoided mass gatherings, and then later, if everyone had gotten vaccinated, then this pandemic would be as good as over. But because Republicans pushed back on every safety measure every single step of the way, that allowed this pandemic to continue to explode throughout the country. They were so concerned about not shutting down the economy for a single day that in effect, they ensured that the economy would be shut down for a far, far longer amount of time than that. And of course, anyone with even a 7-year-old's understanding of delayed gratification would have understood that. But for Republicans, it was only about winning the news cycle of the day and standing up for freedom and getting booked on Fox News that night. And so because they were more interested in turning a public health issue into a political culture war issue, here we are almost 2 years into a pandemic that is somehow worse now than it was in March of 2020. And so it should be absolutely no surprise that they're doing it again, holding the debt ceiling hostage and dangling the threat of the US defaulting so that they can win yet another petty political issue by doing whatever they can to make it more difficult for Democrats to govern. And just like Republicans were willing to sacrifice 700,000 American lives and counting to coronavirus, they're now willing to sacrifice the credit and the economy of the United States because hurting Joe Biden is more important than helping Americans. So look, at the end of the day, we're contending with a crisis of Republicans' own making, a completely and wholly avoidable disaster that the GOP brought about because they are incapable of allowing the government to function as it should. So instead, they'll do their best to break it and then point to the thing that they just broke as evidence that government doesn't work, and that Democrats' plans to expand the government are all doomed, and that you should vote for Republicans because they promised to shrink the government. It is such blatantly transparent, circular logic that I can't figure out how it's not insulting to the people who hear it. And yet, as far as Mitch McConnell and his party go, they're not interested in being consistent or fair or even just protecting our economy or our citizens. They are only interested in their own power, and they don't care what they have to destroy in pursuit of it. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.